The story of Second Amendment. On April 19, 1775, before dawn, the church bells rang in Concord. The bell signaled neighbors to gather their muskets and rush to the bridge. A group of 800 British soldiers had been ordered to seize the weapons from the American colonists. By sunrise, a group of 150 locals, called the Minutemen, gathered in the British troops' path. The two groups faced each other across the North Bridge, and then a shot was fired. Like the first shot of a skirmish earlier that day in the nearby town of Lexington, it was a shot heard around the world. The American Revolution has begun in the defense of the right to bear arms. The Founding Fathers remembered this 12 years later when they wrote the Second Amendment into the Constitution. But there is more to it. The root of the Second Amendment goes back around 100 years before the U.S. Constitution was even written. In 1689, there was the English Bill of Rights. It said the people who were Protestant could have weapons to protect themselves as long as it was legal. This idea came because the King of England, King James II, was trying to control and disarm people who disagreed with him. He wanted to use militias who were loyal to him to do his dirty work. This caused a lot of problems, and eventually, there was a big change, the Glorious Revolution, where King James II was overthrown by William and Mary. Back in early America, when the country was just starting, there were citizen militias made up of people from local communities. These militias were there to help protect everyone if there was a trouble. At that time, some people didn't like the idea of having big armies of professional soldiers because they thought it could lead to problems. When the Declaration of Independence was written, it listed some complaints against King George III, one of which was that he had made the military too powerful and did not ask the local government for permission before keeping armies during peaceful times. After the Revolutionary War, some states like Pennsylvania made laws to protect the right of the people to have weapons. They did this because they were worried about the government having too much power over them, just like they were worried during the time of King George III. This idea later became the part of the Second Amendment in the Constitution. The Article 8 of the Pennsylvania Declaration of the Rights of 1776 reads that the people have a right to bear arms for the defense of themselves and the state, and as standing armies in the time of peace are dangerous to liberty. They ought not to be kept, and that the military should be kept under strict subordination to and governed by the civil power. Similarly, as another example, Massachusetts Declaration of Rights from 1780 provide the people have right to keep and to bear arms for common defense. And as in time of peace, armies are dangerous to liberties, they ought not to maintain without the consent of the legislature, and the military powers shall always be held in an exact subordination to the civil authority and be governed by it. In a nutshell, colonists during that time believed people have the right to have weapons to protect themselves and their state. Having big armies during peacetime can be dangerous for freedom, so they should not have them. The military should always follow the rule of the government and be controlled by it. During the time when the US Constitution was being discussed and agreed upon, there were worries about having a big national army like the one the British used to control its colonies. Some people, known as Anti-Federalists, were especially concerned giving too much power to the central government, including the power to have a strong military. The Constitution did give Congress the ability to create and pay for an army. It also allowed Congress to organize, train, and call upon the militias in certain situations. However, the states still had control over choosing militia officers and training them. The reason for these parts of the Constitution was to make sure the country should defend itself properly. They were worried that having untrained soldiers would not be enough to protect everyone. But even with these rules, some people were still worried that the Constitution gave the federal government too much power and might harm people's freedom. In the Federalist paper, James Madison said that the state governments, supported by the people, would be strong enough to balance out a big national army, even if it was as strong as the whole country. James Madison believed that having armed citizen and local government that people care about would make it really hard for anyone with ambitious plan to take over. Some states still wanted to make sure that the right to have weapons were clearly protected by the Constitution. They suggested different ways to do this. When the first Congress met, they discussed amendment to the Constitution. When James Madison were working with the first federal Congress, he had to look at a lot of ideas from different states about changing the Constitution. One of the things he did was write the first draft that would become the Second Amendment. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. A well-armed and well-regulated militia being the best security of a free country. But no person religiously scrupulous of bearing arms shall be compelled to render military service in person, which means people have the right to have and carry weapons, and this right should not be taken away. Having a well-armed and well-organized militia is important for keeping a free country. However, if someone has religious belief that prevent them from carrying weapons, they should not be forced to serve in the military. A group in the House of Representatives changed the order of the sentence in Madison's idea for the Second Amendment. They put the part about the militia first, saying it's made up of regular people. They also made some small changes to the wording and punctuations. In the House of Representatives, a big part of discussion was about the part of the proposed Second Amendment that talked about people having religious beliefs against bearing arms. Elbridge Gerry was worried that this part would let those who in power decide who is religiously against bearing arms and stop them from having weapons. He suggested that the part should only apply to people in specific religious group who have this belief, but this suggestion wasn't accepted. The other ideas that were not accepted included removing the whole religious objector part, making it so that the people could pay instead of serving, but Roger Sherman thought this might not work because these people might also have strong belief against paying or getting substitute. Adding trained to arms after well-regulated militia, which Elbridge Gerry thought would show that it's government's job to make sure that the country is safe. So they debated a lot about how to word this part of the Second Amendment. The final version of the Second Amendment was decided in the Senate. They removed the part about religious objections and made some other changes. They took out the part about the militia being made up of regular people, and they changed best security to the necessary to the security of a free state. They also rejected other ideas like putting limits on a big army during peacetime and adding for the common defense next to the bear arms. The complete Second Amendment was sent to the states in late September of 1789, and now we have the final version of the Second Amendment, which is a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Thank you for watching this video. If you learned something, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.